an unconstitutional hoax.
Aloha and welcome to Trust and Verify. Before we go any further, yes, special time because we have things that we have to do, and we're never on time. You guys know this by now. We have screwed you over so many times. I'm amazed anyone shows up to watch this shit show sometimes. But special shout out to our friend Doc Martin. Why? Because for the first time in her college's history, Texas Tech Raiders are going to the NCAA championship game. And oh, by the way, Professor Oliver McGee is also a professor for Texas Tech. So, interesting factoid that we all have connections to Texas Tech. So everybody vote and root for those guys for that special event there. So before we go any further, I got to introduce my friend, my partner, my co-host, Boogie Bumper. Boogie, what's going on, brother?
Texas Tech. Woo! Come on, baby. Texas Tech. I don't know. What's a Texas Tech?
It's the university. It's a university.
Okay. Well, whatever Texas Tech is, I hope it wins whatever the hell it is it's doing. Congratulations. No, I'm just kidding. I know what football is.
It's the basketball tournament.
Thanks for having us, James. Thanks for having us. Thanks everyone in the chat. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for joining. Yes, we did. We are screwing you over once more, but it's not 1 a.m. It's early in the day. It's earlier in the day. So there'll be plenty of time to digest and plenty of sleep to be had tonight. So we're actually doing you a favor by screwing you over, which is kind of, the political way of doing things. Really, if you think about it, this is a political show. So we want to screw you over in the nicest way possible. So, James, do you want to kick off with the breaking news? The breaking news.
Breaking news right now.
Breaking news. Here we go. I got this from the Daily Beast. Kevin McAleenan, James, to become acting Homeland Security Secretary after Kirstjen Nielsen resigns. There he is. President Trump announced Sunday that Kevin McAleenan, the current U.S. Customs and Border Protection Commissioner, will become the acting Homeland Security Secretary in the wake of Kirstjen Nielsen's Sunday resignation. I have confidence that Kevin will do a great job, Trump wrote. The announcement comes just seconds after the president announced Nielsen's departure on Twitter and thanked her for her service. It's not yet clear exactly when Nielsen is leaving the role. James, would it be safe to say, I don't know anything about this guy? Nothing, okay? Nothing. But would it be safe to say that the current Customs and Border Protection Commissioner, after the U.S. Customs and Border Protection authorities have been in the news the last couple of weeks, really trying to drive home the narrative that there is indeed a crisis at the border is at breaking point, something has to be done now. Would it be fair to say that this guy is going to take, would you say, a more hardline approach to the border issue than perhaps Kirstjen Nielsen was prepared to take? Do you think that might be happening? Just put that out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that. And real quick break here. Yes, we can see YouTube chat. Yes, we can see Periscope chat. And yes, we could even see Twitch chat if we actually had anybody over at Twitch watching, but that's all right. So, yes, absolutely. I think that it is safe to say that we're going to take a much more hardline stance. In fact, one of the sub-stories to this story is that Donald Trump put out a tweet, and there was a news story where I think people are missing a very key component here. Donald Trump put out that he's reallocating 750 border agents to the ports of entry. So what does that tell you? That basically people from the Border Patrol that would normally be patrolling the in-between the ports of entry have now been shifted to the ports of entry. So normally that would tell you, well, that's going to leave a gap in the middle. But who's down at the border? Hello, military. Military's on the border. What does that tell you that he's preparing to do? He's pushing staff to increase the staff at the ports of entry where the military would have no effect, and he's getting the Border Patrol agents basically out of the way of the military staff. So, yeah, that's how I see this going, absolutely, especially based on what the president's recent communications have been.
Okay, fair enough. Let's stay on the border. Let's move things around a little bit. I want to show you this one, James. From CNN a couple of days ago. It may take 2 years to identify thousands of separated families, government says. Do you remember when we were saying things like there are record amounts of families approaching the US border, and we were told that this was merely a manufactured crisis? It was all brewed up in the sick, racist brain of Donald Trump and his sycophantic conservative press, which apparently consists of a few people on Fox News and Breitbart, going up against the monoliths of like CNN and MSNBC. It was all just a concocted right-wing fantasy. Do you remember that?
Yep, I absolutely remember that.
So this is CNN. It could take up to 2 years for the government to identify potentially thousands of additional immigrant families, US authorities separated at the southern border, officials said in a court filing. The government's proposed plan, detailed for the first time in documents filed late Friday night, outlines a strategy for piecing together exactly who might have been separated by combing through thousands of records using a mix of data and analysis and manual review. See, this is one of those things, James, I think that really doesn't get spoken about much by people, I think on purpose. People try to say that opposition or taking a hardline stance to immigration is all about racism or xenophobia or fear or bigotry or these kinds of shallow assessments, when it's actually quite feasible and reasonable to say there are underlying costs here, and one of the costs is government processing. If you have a backlog of 2 years, that's immigration officials you have to pay to do this work. You have to put these people somewhere. Think of the effect that it has on the court system as well. For ones that actually turn up for their court dates, they have to have lawyers appointed to them. This is all cost, right? And that's cost that people never talk about on cable news. So they're saying how awful it is that it's going to take 2 years. Why doesn't somebody in the corporate press do their job and actually tally up the cost of what it's going to take to have all of these lawyers, all of the courts, all of the judges, all of the immigration officials actually processing this amount of people? That's before they've even been legally allowed in, if you know what I mean. Yeah. I want to take you back though. James, you're always telling me I don't do enough callbacks. And I'm gonna do a callback here. I'm gonna give myself a little pat on the back. I did this on my podcast last week. A grand total of 28 people know that I'm right, but now all of the people in the chat are going to know that I'm right too. We were talking about the shift in narrative between why it was a manufactured crisis leading up to the midterms and why it's no longer a manufactured crisis. I'm going to play you a little clip from my podcast last week, and then I'm going to play you a clip from Chris Cuomo yesterday. Check this out. Morning, Joe. Do you know, to me, it seems pretty honest. It seems pretty easy for me to figure out why now all of a sudden they're calling this a crisis and why they didn't. See, when Donald Trump was running, when the Republicans were running during the midterms, and, you know, the crisis at the border was a fundamental pillar of their campaign push, the Democrats had to deny that there was a crisis. This is all for Donald Trump's vanity wall. There's no crisis here. But now the midterm election is over and they won back the House. But see, now they have 2 years up until the presidential election. Now it's a crisis because now you can argue that Donald Trump isn't solving the crisis. You see? So you say it's all Donald Trump's fault. Yes, there is a crisis at the border, and Donald Trump isn't doing enough to help these poor families and with their irregular migration and asylum seeking. Do you see? Do you see the push here? We need more beds. We need more visas. We need more money allocated to this humanitarian crisis. Donald Trump just hates brown people. That's why he's not helping them. There's families, there's a crisis, families are crossing, children are being separated, etc., etc., etc. You know how it goes, right? So while the Republicans in the midterms were trying to run on the border crisis and we need border security, you deny that it exists because you can paint them as liars and propagandists trying to fight for Donald Trump's vanity wall, which is a waste of money. Now that you win back the House, you spin it all around 180 degrees and you say Donald Trump isn't spending enough money on the humanitarian crisis and the poor women and children who only want a better life, and we need more beds and more services and more free stuff for them. And Donald Trump is a racist because he's not helping these people because they're brown. And there you've got your new spin. So keep an eye out for that. You know, we were right about Nancy Pelosi and other people backing Joe Biden, saying it's not going to make any difference. He can still run for president. We were right about that. We'll prove right about that 24 hours later. Let's see how long it takes for that narrative to come forward now. Okay, so I said keep an eye out for that narrative. Let's see how long it takes to come forward. This is Chris Cuomo yesterday. James?
So my argument was simple and strategic. Mr. President, if you're going to the border, don't just go look at a fence and extend a farce. The justification for this part was the fence he went to isn't new construction. He can say it is, doesn't make it so. It's replacement fence that was planned for before this POTUS was
wait for it.
The deception of the reality was fitting, if you think about it, because the fence farce was a redo to begin with. Pretending to build something he hasn't, just an extension of other demagogues. My argument was it would have been a great opportunity to shift and embrace humanity that is the actuality.
Here it is.
He's demonstrably wrong.
Here it is.
The crisis is fixed by a wall. You see the numbers. You heard CBP. Take a look at your screen.
Now he's not doing enough.
Secretary. It is kids and families and the flow at the points of entry.
There you go.
Fence doesn't fix it alone. So if he went there,
there's the kids,
showed he cared, that would put him in the right space. And there was a second stage. Use the emergency declaration to send resources to the border that they need.
More resources.
In one stroke, you go where almost no one in Congress has. You show that you care. You do something about it that puts Congress in a position to have to act.
There it is. So what? 4 days later, James, after we said it on the podcast, they're going to shift the story to be about now there is a crisis and Donald Trump needs to do more. The humanitarian aid, James, the women and children, he needs to send more money and more resources to the border because all he cares about is his vanity wall. There we have it again. The corporate media, ladies and gentlemen, this is what I'm telling you. This is what we do. This is why we use these sources on this show. We are showing you that the corporate media is more predictable than sunrise. Once you can see the narrative, you can see it sprouting up like a seedling in a spring garden bed, James, and it shoots up like a mighty vine just hours later, every single time, every time. One more story just to top it off, James, and then I'll cut back to you.
Cool.
Trump belittles Democrats, says asylum seekers look like they're fighting for the UFC because he's heartless, remember. President Donald Trump accused Democrats of abandoning Israel and claimed that asylum seekers look like UFC fighters during his speech Saturday before the Republican Jewish coalition in Las Vegas. Right off the bat, the president referenced Minnesota Democrat Ilhan Omar, who has made several controversial comments suggesting that politicians who support Israel are financially motivated and pro-Israel groups advocate for allegiance to a foreign country. Trump later repeated previous allegations that the Democrats have even allowed the terrible scourge of anti-Semitism, blah, blah, blah. Trump also called the asylum program a scam, alleging that lawyers coach tough, violent men through the process. Some of the roughest people you've ever seen. People that look like they should be fighting for the UFC. They read a little page given by the lawyers. They're all over the place, lawyers. They tell them what to say. You look at this guy. You look, wow, that's a tough cookie. So there's the new story, James. Predictable like sunrise.
Yep. I'm about to give you the absolute best backup you've ever had. But first, let me put this on the screen real quick, because I noticed in the chat some people had not seen that the president did tweet exactly what I just said. This is the president's tweet. We have redeployed 750 agents at the southern border's specific ports of entry in order to help with the large-scale surge of illegal migrants trying to make their way into the United States. This will cause traffic and commercial delays until such time as Mexico is able to use. And then he went on into the second tweet, which is, it's powerful. Sorry, now my English is fucked up. Hold on. until such time as Mexico is able to use its powerful common sense immigration laws to stop illegals from coming through Mexico into the U.S. and removing them back to their country of origin. Until Mexico cleans up this ridiculous and massive migration, we will be focusing on border security, not ports of entry. In the meantime, the Democrats in Congress must help the Republicans. We need their votes to end the horrible, costly, and foolish loopholes in our immigration laws. Once that happens, all will be smooth. We can never allow open borders. Now, I am about to give you your absolute best ever backup to prove that this stuff is running from the Democrat Party right through to the mainstream media. Welcome back, Texas Blue, to the chat room, saying the exact same talking points as Chris Cuomo. And we noticed, believe me, we called for you. We asked to do a welfare check on you when you were so conspicuously lost throughout the entire time. You should have been out here apologizing for how absolutely horrifically wrong you were over the Mueller report. And also, we noticed you're absent over your need to be here to apologize how horrifically wrong you were about the fact that your boys are going to prison. And we'll be highlighting that later on. But this right here is perfect evidence that these people are controlled opposition, run directly from the Democrat Party. And that's why his talking points, although he's been gone throughout that entire length of time, match perfectly with what Chris Cuomo just said and what Boogie Bumper predicted.
Former Democratic aide pleads guilty to doxing GOP senators attending Kavanaugh hearing. Oh, why would they do that? Why would a Democratic aide dox GOP senators attending a Kavanaugh hearing, James? Remember, James, it's the Democrats who are in favor of, the institutions of democracy and due process and all of those things. They just want to see justice be done, James. They wouldn't want to intimidate GOP senators. That's more like the conservatives to do that kind of thing. Let's have a look here at the little video on the Hill.
A former congressional Democratic staff.
Remember, this is the known right-wing conspiracy police state website, The Hill, ladies and gentlemen.
Staff member pleaded guilty on Friday to posting private information about Republican senators who took part in the hearings on sexual assault allegations against then Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh.
Wow.
Jackson Costco pleaded guilty to 2 counts of making public restricted personal information and 1 count each of computer fraud, witness tampering, and obstruction of justice, the Washington Post reported.
Obstruction of justice? Oh, how funny. A former congressional Democratic staff member pleaded guilty on Friday to posting private information about Republican senators who took part in the hearings. The 5 federal felony counts carry maximum penalties of up to 20 years in prison. In accordance with a plea agreement, prosecutors said a sentencing range of 46 to 57 months applied under federal guidelines. Costco, who has served about 4 months in jail since he was charged, will be sentenced on June 13, the newspaper noted. The agreement comes after Costco was accused of releasing the private information of 5 Republican senators last year. Costco was reportedly upset after he had been fired from the office of Maggie Hassan, a Democrat in NH, James. In May, he said in court filings that he had, quote, engaged in an extraordinarily extensive data theft scheme by burglarizing the office several times after his ouster to steal sensitive information that he could use later. Tisk, 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 tisk. Oh, it's awful, James. What do you think of that?
Look, we all predicted this stuff. We called it. This guy's going to do 5 years in prison. This is only because literally he pled to it because he was facing over 20 years for each crime. And this is federal time. This is what we've been saying. The left and the Democrats are willing to go to prison to try to take down Donald Trump. They will lie, cheat, steal. They will do anything that they possibly can to just try to get a rid of Donald Trump. And I think it's ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. Like, they want to break the law now. They're literal. This is the entire Democrats party. In fact, there we go. Texas Blue just posted in the chat. Their entire plan is to now break the law again and try to force the release of tax returns and go after private citizens. They're unhinged. They're insane. This is why they're going down. I can't wait for the next stories. I mean, we're about to highlight for you tonight how incredibly winning we are and how incredibly accurate our predictions have been over the last years. Because Devin Nunes today was on Mario Botaromo. But I don't want to get ahead of Boogie, but I'm just letting you know, we're kicking your ass, and Texas Blue is getting paid to be here, because otherwise he'd be at home crying into his vodka.
Ah, James, no, I think you've got it all wrong. The Democrats are all about justice. They just want to see justice done. Justice be done, James. Scrutiny and suspicion as Mueller report undergoes redaction. How dare you redact things from a report, James? The escalating political battle over special counsel Robert S. They always say it this way. Robert S. Mueller III. Robert S. Spotted fox hunting with Robert S. Mueller III. I'm surprised they're still calling him Robert S. Mueller III, though, because now isn't he a crook, a criminal? Isn't he also Putin's cockholster? Because remember, he was a great guy 2 weeks ago. And now it's like, he's gutless. He's gutless. He didn't go the full way. We need to subpoena Robert Mueller so he can answer our questions, that bastard. Report centers on redactions. A loyally editing process that angered distrustful Democrats eager to see all the evidence and conclusions from his 22-month investigation of President Trump's conduct and Russia's elaborate interference operation during the 2016 election. They're still just saying the same things. They're not going to stop saying the same things. They are just, that's all they can do is just say the same things over and over again. Isn't that strange? It's almost like a program pattern of behavior is emerging here, isn't it?
Yeah.
And repeaters, not reporters. Attorney General William P. Barr is redacting at least 4 categories of information from the report, which spans nearly 400 pages, before issuing it to Congress and the public. You know what they should do, James? They should give this guy his job back. Former Democrat aide pleads guilty to doxing GOP Senator. I bet he wouldn't mind getting the full report out there. Let him have a crack at it before issuing it to Congress and the public. Legal experts say he has wide discretion to determine what should not be revealed. But do you see the manipulation here? Wide discretion to determine what should not be revealed is not the same as cannot reveal things which he is legally bound to redact. Of course he has wide discretion to determine what should not be revealed. I mean, he could redact all of it if he wanted to. He could redact from the first letter to the last letter, and he can reveal almost all of it. But he can't reveal certain parts. He is legally bound to redact certain parts when it comes to, say, things like private citizens' information and whatnot, right? So how do you write that up? You don't say that he's legally bound to redact certain parts. You say legal experts say he has wide discretion to determine what should not be revealed. And next thing you know, the reader gets the impression that he's keeping stuff from you by choice instead of legally. Meaning the fight over blacked out boxes is likely to spawn months of fights between Congress and the Justice Department, and it may end up in the courts, which is exactly what they want to do. The first public confrontation is imminent, James, with Barr scheduled to appear Tuesday and Wednesday before the House and Senate Appropriations Committees for hearings ostensibly about the Justice Department's budget. He is expected to face extensive questioning about the Mueller report and his ongoing redaction process, though his testimony will be scrutinized for any sign he is trying to protect the president. There's lots of pressure. There's lots of pressure, all pointing in the direction of doing a robust release. What the hell is a robust release, James? Can you tell me? Can you tell me what a robust release is? I suspect a robust release would be something that Joe Biden does when the cameras aren't on.
Oh, that's fucking great.
John Byers, who held senior roles in the Justice Department during the Obama administration and now works at American Oversight, a liberal watchdog group. We are very hopeful the Attorney General will do the right thing here and make everything public that can lawfully be made public. See, even the guy from the Liberal Oversight Committee gets it. Even he gets it. The president's critics question whether Barr soft-pedaled Mueller's findings, concern that intensified after recent reports indicating some on Mueller's team are unhappy with the brevity of Barr's initial report to Congress and believe more could and should be done about the seriousness of what they found. But here's the kicker, James. Here's the kicker, that they actually write in about 8 paragraphs into the story, which actually debunks all of the information that comes before it. Well, at least the inference that the writer is trying to create for the audience. Listen to this. Barr is working with Rosenstein, Mueller, and their key aides to produce an edited version of the report. Wait, you mean Robert S. Mueller III is also advising Barr on which parts to redact? Shock horror! Why would he be doing something like that? Why would he be doing something like that?
And boom,
that doesn't
there
make
goes
any
the narrative.
sense. I don't understand. What about the justice, James? What about the justice? You mean Mueller is working with Barr and Rosenstein to decide which parts should be redacted? But I thought it was all Barr covering for Trump, James. We need to haul Barr's fat ass into Congress and grill him immediately about protecting the president. Protecting the president. We demand a robust release, James. A robust release.
The funny thing about the robust release here is the fact that basically exactly the first day the Mueller report dropped off the report to William Barr. William Barr had a release the next day to the Congress, and he said immediately that this 400-page report will be delivered to Congress after all proper redactions are made to protect the people that are innocent. Just think about this. Texas Blue, whose crazy lefty lunatic talking points, you don't want us to release your tax returns to the world so that every Tom, Dick, and Harry can start digging through there and causing you all kinds of stress and innuendo and problems because you claim to be an attorney. Since you're an attorney, I guarantee you cheated on your taxes. That's just the way of the world. You guys have moved shit everywhere. I promise you, you're an attorney. You hid some money somewhere. You moved it over here. You used the law as a legal loophole to do some crazy shit. That's just the way you lawyers are. You want to fuck everybody else, and you get special treatment. That's why you're probably a Democrat. That's probably exactly why you guys are pushing for all this crazy nonsense that makes no sense. And you're going after private citizens' documents. These things can be turned around and used directly on you. It's just like the First Amendment. It's just like the reason we don't block you. The First Amendment is very, 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 very important to hear all sides. Block theory is bad, right? Unless you're just a completely psychotic person and you're just not worth our time, we're not going to block you. Why? Because the First Amendment matters. It's the same thing here. Protection of a citizen's rights, no matter who they are, matters, or else it would be turned against you. It will become your problem someday.
Oh no, I disagree, James. I let the psychotics go to the head of the class for me because they make all around it. They make everyone else seem rational and sane, and that's exactly the kind of person. It's like the kind of effect where if you're a average looking girl, you want to make sure that all of your friends are really ugly. You know what I mean? Because you look like a superstar then. So welcome aboard, Philly. Invite your friends. I've got another article here for you, James. Is the US a democracy? A social studies battle turns on the nation's values. Michigan spent 5 years debating how to teach American history. One of the biggest questions was how to describe the nation's government. Can you believe that Michigan has spent 5 years trying to figure out what government the United States government is? Now it makes sense. Who do they vote for again in the previous election? Say no more. Lansing, Michigan, James. Bruising political fights are usual business in Becky Dubofsky's 8th grade social studies classroom. From a model constitutional convention to a bare-knuckle debate in Congress over slavery, she regularly has students assume roles of partisans throughout American history. I sincerely hope that she only has the white children arguing on behalf of slavery, because otherwise I suspect that we wouldn't be reading about it in the New York Times. It might be in Breitbart, if that were the case. After the exercises, the class comes back together to debate whether the nation lived up to what the state of Michigan calls core democratic values, such as equality, liberty, and diversity. Look, I'm not as well versed on, the founding papers of the American Republic, James, but can you direct me to the part in any of those papers where they say the core democratic values of the United States are equality, liberty, and diversity? Can you tell me where that comes up? I'm not sure.
No,
Not sure that's in there. Maybe it's somewhere in the back. Maybe it's somewhere in the back. For decades, the values have been at the heart of the state learning standards in social studies, a doorstop of a document that guides what teachers of history, civics, economics, and geography cover in their lesson plans. I'm really proud of my students, said Ms. Dubofsky. They can handle the complexity. They can handle the complexity, but the government of Michigan still doesn't know what type of government the United States federal government is. Can you get your head around that? Here's one. Activists have long seen influencing state standards, James, as an effective way to shape the next generation of voters. And I thought, yes, when I read that, there's some truth. New York Times is printing truth, but what examples do they give, ladies and gentlemen? I'm glad you asked. In 2010, conservatives on the Texas State Board of Education removed the word democracy as a description of American government. Why the hell would they do that? Maybe it's because it's a fucking republic, you idiots. Georgia has also debated the term, eventually settling in 2016 on standards that use the phrase representative democracy / republic. The Michigan conservatives / republic, who prefer constitutional republic, say their arguments are historical and not partisan. While the founders were indeed skeptical of direct democracy, James, mainstream historians, red flag, that's a red flag for me when I hear the term mainstream historian. That usually means culturally approved historian. Right. Political scientists and legal scholars say the United States is both a representative democracy and a republic, and there is no contradiction between those terms. James, how does the New York Times define a democracy? I'm glad you asked, comrade. The emphasis on comrade. A democracy, pardon me, a democracy is government by the people, who may rule either directly or indirectly through elected representatives. A republic is a form of government in which the people's elected representatives make decisions. James, did you know that you're actually a democracy and a republic at the same time? So I guess we better get rid of the electoral college then, am I right? Because why have an electoral college? Look, quote, some of the country's political processes, like ballot referendums, are more democratic than others, like the electoral college. There it is. Grappling with that complexity is key to understanding American government, according to social studies experts. There you go. There you go. It's just a democracy / republic, James. I'm glad that they make the admission that this level of schooling is important for shaping the understanding of the next generation of voters. Aren't you happy that they admitted that? And that they themselves can't decide whether they want to teach the kids that America is a democracy or a republic or not? Yeah. But don't worry, those conservative activists on the Texas State Board of Education, they're doing their best to stamp their authority onto the young minds of the students. Those bastards.
So the constitutional republic is crystal clear, and they're right that the founders of our countries, they weren't just skeptical of direct democracy. They were downright terrified. They were terrified of a direct democracy for very good reason. Every single direct democracy ever in the history of the world has failed. Mob rule. And in fact, there's several dozens of quotes from every different founding father of this country to show you that democracy fails when the poor people realize that they can vote themselves your money. That's where democracy fails every single time. And what are we watching the quote-unquote Democrats do every single day? Vote your money out of your pocket into theirs. This is why they were downright terrified. And by the way, history is not up for consensus. Just like science is not up for consensus. There's facts. History is about facts. This is a fact. The founding fathers, if they wanted a direct democracy, could have fucking had one. They were the founding fathers. They didn't want one. They said, no, it's a constitutional, protected republic. Just for this very reason, so that the sociopathic, psychopathic Democrats could not stick their dick up your ass anytime they wanted. That's the point.
James, they were also white, though, so they were probably wrong. Let's be honest here. Let's be honest. They were right. And they were Christian. Well, some of them were Christian, some of them weren't. But, you know, look, it was just all kinds of wrong happening with the Founding Fathers. They weren't so special. They weren't so flash. James, one of our favorites, Salon. What campus free speech? Arizona case shows how far the right will go to stifle dissent. Did you know that? That's news to me. 3 students arrested for Border Patrol protest as conservatives crusade against free speech hits critical mass, James. Do you remember a couple of weeks ago, Donald Trump signing that executive order about free speech on campus and you don't get your money back? How would you address that if you were would you say, to the more extreme end of the spectrum and, you know, au fait perhaps with reality and well-versed in, you know, basic political positioning? You wouldn't address the issues on campus. You would accuse the other side of actually being the ones who are doing what you're doing, correct or not? So much for the trope that universities are a bastion of free speech or of liberal political correctness, for that matter. In 2018, 4 Republican-controlled state governments pushed through legislation that sought to deploy law enforcement to force a fallacious balance into campus debates and speech. Those Nazis. Pushed by ultra-conservative groups, James. Have you heard of ultra-conservative? I think that's the new Marvel character. I think that's the new Marvel guy. Ladies and gentlemen. Ultra-conservative. Ultra-conservative. He's going to save the day and tell your kids which hole to piss in. That's ultra-conservative. Groups like the Goldwater Institute and big money Republican donors like the Mercer family, under the guise of protecting the rights of controversial conservative speakers, James, the new laws actually seek to punish dissent. Now the president of the University of Arizona is defending his school's decision to seek criminal charges against 3 students who protested the presence of Border Patrol agents on campus. No violence took place during the March 19 demonstration, yet the school concluded that the students broke Arizona law when they publicly harassed the agents, a Class 1 misdemeanor that could end up in 6 months of jail time. Speaking of protest, James, and free speech, I did find this little video that came out not that long ago. Somebody protesting Border Patrol on university campus. Let's have a little look.
I don't know who allowed the murder patrol.
The murder patrol.
Murderers into campus where I pay to be here, and they allow murderers to be.
Do you really pay though? Do you really pay? Let's see her fucking tax returns. I want to see her tax returns.
That's on campus where I pay to be here. Murders on campus. Murders on campus.
Did you see the look on his face? So she's standing there at the doorway going, murderers, murderers, murderers. And he looks over like, okay. Let's skip along here a little bit further up where she actually walks into the classroom now.
Pay to be here that need this to be a safe space for them. And we have the KKK.
The KKK.
Now the KKK. Holy shit!
Right here at U of A.
This
the
is
KKK and their supporters, James. Looks like a regular KKK rally to me.
Yep.
I guess we're too soon for the lynching. I guess that comes later in the mess hall somewhere, perhaps in the cafeteria.
You're welcome to sit in. But
great, I can sit in the entire time. I'll just be saying that they're murderers the entire fucking time because it's the truth. They're murderers, and you as a club should be more conscious of the rest of the students on this campus and the students that need to be safe on this campus, and maybe find a place.
See, this entitlement stuff, and this is exactly the kind of shit we're talking about. She is now disrupting these students' learning experience, right? For whatever reason, this particular club has invited these guys from the Border Patrol down to come and give a presentation. They're in their own room. The door is closed. She is now invading their space, and she's screaming out. She's filming murderers, murderers, murderers. She's actually invited to sit in on the class if she wants to and see what the guys have to say. She's not interested in what the guys have to say. She's interested. This is the thing that I've talked about so much with free speech, James, and the First Amendment. Free speech is a two-way street. It's not just about the right of the person to speak. It is the right of the audience to hear what that person is saying. That's right. The other side of the free speech debate. So I care not for people who pretend to be, they'll say, oh, I'm just using my free speech here. No, you are denying me access to some speech. You are denying me from hearing something. And I don't care how smart you think you are. I did not give you the right to decide for me what I'm capable of hearing and what I'm not capable of hearing. If you feel unsafe, you leave, not me. If you feel at risk from this speech, it's on you to cover your ears for the scary parts. Cover your eyes for the scary parts of freedom. You do not cover mine, because judging by the fact that you cannot help yourself and you have to scream murderer in a hallway whilst live streaming something, I don't think you have the cognitive ability to decide for me what I can and can't hear. And she's now doing it to these students. This is the kind of shit that needs to be eradicated. By all means, you can have the opinion that people are working for the KKK, that they're murderers, that they're evil, blah, blah, blah. But the sad reality is nobody in that class gives one solitary fuck what you think, because you are now infringing on their free speech, i.e. their ability to hear what somebody else is saying. It's always a two-way street, always. And if you cut people off from speaking, you are denying yourself. You are becoming a victim of your own policy, because you're denying yourself the ability to hear something and something that might change your mind. And I'm not interested in that, not in the slightest.
I'm not sure if you have it close or could get it, but you should. If we don't have time today, we'll do it next week. We need to replay your documentation on the free speech, because that was one of the best videos on explaining what about a lot of this stuff is with free speech. And this is the point. Your rights end where mine begin. And that is the meeting point in the middle. Exactly what we keep saying right now, right? She has every right to go up there, call them murderers, disrupt for a few minutes, and then fucking leave, so that she's not interfering with their rights. And that's where the problem is for the left. They don't stop. They think their rights supersede everybody else's rights. You had a right to say something. You said it. You disrupted. You did it. Now move along so that everybody else can do what the fuck they want. That's the point. That's where it should and how it should always happen. That's the way it's always worked. That's how freedom exists for everyone. When you dominate, like they try to do, and destroy the ability for people to speak, people to hear, now you have completely squashed all of my rights. You have stepped and trampled all over my constitutional rights to speak or to hear whatever the fuck I want to say or hear.
James, speaking of speech, Ocasio-Cortez slams those who accuse her of faking an accent. I'm from the Bronx, y'all. I act and talk like it, James. Rep. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is angry at her critics for their latest dig against her, claiming that she changed her accent while addressing a predominantly black audience. My niggers. The freshman lawmaker had been criticized, quote, after seeming to develop a new accent, as Fox News put it. Her critics didn't quite put it so diplomatically. In case you're wondering, this is what blackface sounds like, one wrote on Twitter, for example. Ocasio-Cortez said, and I quote, I'm proud to be a bartender. Ain't nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with work and retail. There's nothing wrong with preparing that your neighbors will eat. She also said, folks talking about my voice can step right off. But if you want to put it in the Bronx accent, because I wouldn't it be something like step right off. Folks talking about my accent can step right off. Okay, just God. Step off. Step off. Women's March. I mean, that's totally normal for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, isn't it? I mean, when in Rome, right? Women's March and Kavanaugh's speech, the same. They've been saying for a while. She says she comes from the Bronx, but she sounds like a Valley girl. Have you heard that?
Yeah, she apparently I don't know the exact boroughs because I can't remember, but it's something like she was born, I guess, somewhere in the Bronx, but by the age of 5, basically kindergarten, she moved to this other place, which was essentially the New York version of the Valley. I think it's called like Yorktown Territory or some shit. I don't know. Honestly, I don't remember, but yeah. So she never even grew up in the Bronx. That's why she doesn't have an accent that matches. That's why she doesn't have, the mannerisms from the Bronx, because she's not from the Bronx. She literally, like, if you leave at 5, kindergarten, you haven't even interacted with your peers yet. So your speech patterns aren't even set. It's hilarious, but believe me.
Well, James, I don't know. I just think you should step right off. Step right.
There it is, Yorktown Heights. Yorktown Heights, that's where it is.
Goyle. In a subsequent tweet, though, the New York lawmaker called criticism hurtful and seemingly part of a strategy to turn every part of her life against her. As much as the right wants to distort and deflect, she said, I am from the Bronx. I act and talk like it, especially when I'm fired up and especially when I'm home. Is she literally complaining? Is she legitimately complaining as a congresswoman who is very highly active on social media, who portrays this indestructible quality,
let me interrupt you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, let me interrupt you. There's an excellent comment in the chat that'll feed right into what you're saying. Black scent is the new Democrat black face. That is freaking an excellent and amazing comment.
Excellent. Step off, motherfucker. But she's in politics, James, and she's complaining. Listen to this. Part of a strategy to turn every part of my life against me. That's what politics is. What have you been doing to the president for the last 2 years, darling, sweetheart? Honestly, do you think that you get like some kind of special treatment here? That's what politics is. That's exactly what it is. They all do it. That's like, you don't get special treatment, even if you are from the Bronx. Even if you are from the Bronx, step right off, motherfucker. You can't be the tough. You can't play the tough guy and the victim at the same time. It doesn't. Exactly. I mean, you can, but it just looks ridiculous. It looks stupid. So I mean, I actually think it's coming to an end already. I think this is a short flare up. I can see the wheels falling off this thing. I don't think it's going to last. She's not as liked even in her home district as much as she was not that long ago. I think the New Yorkers are thinking like, she's given us a bad name, this chick. We don't like her so much. If somebody else comes out and primaries her, she might get rolled.
Did you move on to this too, sorry, James. I pushed the wrong button. But did you see that you talked about primarying her? One of the people thinking of doing exactly that is Brandon Strzok from the Walkaway Movement.
Yes. I did see that. Well, look, here we are. Trust and Verify was right once again, James. Pete. Buttigieg fever hits New Hampshire. Can he keep up the pace? If this weekend was anything to go by, Pete Buttigieg might be the hottest ticket in the Democratic Party right now. Can you give me a hell yeah? I told you this over a month ago. The dark horse, here he comes. The 37-year-old mayor of South Bend, Indiana, held rallies in New Hampshire on Friday and Saturday amid talk of job growth, healthcare, and military service. One thing was clear. If you want to see Buttigieg, get there early. On Friday night, Buttigieg, his campaign T-shirts bear the phonetic spelling Boot Edge Edge. I am not pronouncing his name Boot Edge Edge. Buttigieg. Not happening. It's Buttigieg. I don't give a fuck what he says. I think I know his name better than he.
That's right. Buttigieg.
Sorry?
I said, that's right. It's Buttigieg.
Buttigieg. Yeah. Had been due. Butter wouldn't melt in his mouth. Buttigieg had been due to hold a rally at a brewery in Manchester because of demand. He switched venues at the last minute to the Courier Museum of Art. That quickly sold out too, leaving 200 people standing outside at 7:30. The 200, James. They got to see their man. Buttigieg emerged in the drizzle to lusty chants of Pete. He'd even prepared a joke, James. He's so charming and natural. Quote, I hear the way you ingratiate yourself to voters is to stand on things, he said as he clambered to a bench. It was a reference to the folksy table-hopping style of his Texan rival, Beto O'Rourke. As a gag, it would have been most impressive if Buttigieg hadn't repeated it inside the museum 10 minutes later and at a bookstore the very next day. I've had an epiphany on this guy, and I want to share you. Like, let's work through this. Let's workshop this, right? Here's my epiphany. I actually think that he's going to get the rails run because I think that the people at the top, like your Nancy Pelosi's and stuff, may consider this guy to be the compromise between the moderate Dems and the hard left. Now, hear me out here, right? If you don't control it, you're going to have a primary process, like a nomination process, that shreds all of the Democrat potentials. Like they're all going to go to war with each other. None of them are attacking this guy. Not one. I haven't seen Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, Elizabeth Warren. I haven't seen any dirt leaked on him. Nobody talks about him. Nobody mentions him. It's just the press. Okay? The other ones get asked questions about their Democratic Party rivals and their policies. Nobody ever gets asked anything about this guy. And I think he might be the type that Nancy and Chuck and the rest of the establishment of the Democrats might think that they would be able to control him to an extent, but he ticks enough of the far left and progressive boxes in order to get those people on board where, you know, a more moderate wouldn't be satisfactory to them, like a Joe Biden, for example. And the moderates would appreciate his military service and the fact that he's, you know, a local mayor instead of, you know, because the moderates would never vote for a hard left alternative. Do you see what I'm saying here? Do you think there's something to this or what?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually agree with you. You know, look, we called this stuff out. We saw it. We see how they're playing it. We can even see how the strategy for the mainstream people on the left. In fact, again, grateful to have our boy Texas Blue here because he lets us see that where the coordinations are based on what he says, based on how he tries to drive the chat room. See, that's how controlling the Democrat Party is from the top down. They're trying to use the same tools we use to win, and they can't do it because it's not natural. So when you know and you can see the direct correlating lines and timings, you can always tell what's going on. Like we know Biden, he's done. Why? Because the left has chosen he's done. Not because we had anything to do with it. The left is the ones digging out and throwing all the dirt. The same thing about Camel Toe Harris. She's done. Why? Because the left is slinging the dirt. It's Biden and Kamala that are fighting more than anybody. We know that Elizabeth Warren is just out there as to collect her little base. She has no chance. Why? Because the Democrats don't like her. It's not us. It's the Democrats. Excuse me. We really don't care who shows up. Like, from our side of the coin, don't care. Put them up there, we'll care then. Right now, we're just going to help them destroy each other. That's all. We're just going to keep throwing whatever gas on whatever things they throw out there. We're not wasting our energies or our times fighting over, we're scared of this guy, we're scared of that guy. We don't give two shits. The thing I want people to be aware of is the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Pete Buttigieg are going to be the rising stars of the Democrat Party. They have chosen to pluck these people out of obscurity. They are the ones that are raising the profiles of these people. So when you see that, you need to understand that you need to figure out what's going on with those people so you're prepared when it does become necessary to fight them. So when it does become necessary that they are the person. But I promise you this, just like they plucked out Obama out of obscurity, they're plucking Pete Buttigieg out of obscurity as well. The play is exactly parallel, exactly identical. This guy's profile, I mean, you don't pull a mayor out to a presidential race and give him the press of the century if you're not planning on raising his profile. At a minimum, that guy's running for Senate, most likely in the next, whenever that election's up. That's at a minimum. They're raising this guy's profile. He's young now. In 30 years, that guy is going to be a force to be reckoned with. So better get used to it now. Start understanding, start figuring him out, start understanding what the party is doing to their people. That's all. We're just highlighting the players. That it's not saying that we fear them. We're saying that this is the most likely scenario because you can tell that's what they're doing.
Yeah, I wouldn't even wait 30 years. We know that a large amount of younger voters, James, are going to be coming of voting age in the next 2 years. And, you know, they're going to outnumber the people who are dying. And the people who are dying are more likely to vote Republican, and the younger people are more likely to vote Democrat. And so, you know, maths at some point kicks in here. And this Buttigieg guy seems like a pretty smart cookie to me. I don't like his politics. Don't like his politics much at all, but he doesn't seem like an idiot. So they're the ones you've got to be wary of. James,
real quick. Key Wizard makes an excellent point, and this is why we're highlighting this stuff. Right now, today, Buttigig's history is available online. Think about what they're doing with online censorship. You need to grab that shit and archive it, because when it's time, when it matters, suddenly none of those things will be searchable. None of those things will be able to be found. You won't be able to find a negative position for Buttigieg when they're ready to put him in. Grab that shit and archive it now. This is how they keep changing history. That's why the old microfiche systems of the New York Times are the best, because you can't alter those microfiches very easy and reproduce articles from, 1905, which is why I said, when we start talking about all this stuff historically, you go back and you start reading the headlines of the newspapers from about the 1870 to date, and you will really get a picture of where the history of this country came from.
James, what are you talking about? They rewrite history. I mean, just because we read a story not long ago about historians being told that they must teach that America is both a democracy and a republic simultaneously, they're not trying to change history. Come on. It was always a democracy, you silly rabbit. James, while the Democrat Party may be looking to reposition themselves for new candidates in the future, the corporate press appears to be lagging behind in their support for Joe Biden. I think it's time for the hammering.
Oh shit, I pushed the wrong button. I wasn't expecting that. See, I'm not prepared. The music stopped in the middle. Jesus. Oh, Jesus.
Do you want to hit it again? Do you want to try one more time? Try it one more time?
Hold on. Let's try to get it right. You ready? Let's try to actually do this thing.
The hammering.
Stop the hammering, ladies and gentlemen. And it's also...
We lost your audio now. This is such a shit. Oh my God. Now you got to redo it. We lost all your audio.
All right, I'll do it again. All right, hang on. Let's go here. Let's go here first. And then, okay, and it's also time for...
The Weekly Smelter.
There we go. All right. Like I said, James, the corporate press is lagging behind. They have been covering Joe Biden's pasty, thin razor ass over the last few days. It's not too bad. He's just showing affection. Brian Stelter took it to a whole new level today. Let's watch.
Turning now to the Democratic race. As a viewer, I think one of the most exhausting things about campaign coverage is the will he or won't he? Is he in or is he out? Let's just say it. Joe Biden is in. He is running for president.
Oh, goody.
At some point soon, he'll make it official, but it's very clear that he is planning on running. He's even kind of admitted it in recent interviews.
This will be the first time, by the way, that Megyn Kelly is grateful that she's not working in the press anymore, because she won't have to meet Joe Biden, just quietly.
But obviously, Biden is facing backlash after trying to issue semi-apologetic videos about accusations of inappropriate behavior, but actually not apologizing. This is complicated, and he hasn't made it any better for himself.
It's complicated? No, it's not complicated at all. I ran through this scenario on Thursday night, James. Let me quickly go over it for you again. You're standing there at a campaign rally. You're a lovely young lady. You have your dreams of working in Washington one day. You've got stars in your eyes and you've got hope in your heart. You're getting ready to go out on stage when a very slow old hand creepily rests itself on your left shoulder. And just as you turn around to look at the left hand, you feel the warm breath from Joe Biden's mouth on the back of your naked neck. And before you can turn around to the right, you hear this, James. And you freeze like a deer in the headlights. You freeze. You don't know what to do. Your whole life is flashing before your eyes. And then you feel like the dusty, dry lips pucker and place themselves on the back of your head. And Joe Biden leads into your ear and says, "Hey, can I have a picture with your daughter alone?" So that's what we're talking about here. It's not showing affections per se. I mean, to be fair, I suspect most women would prefer the Trump approach, wouldn't you? Just grab them on the pussy, mate. At least they can see you coming. At least they can see you coming.
SNL even got in the digs last night.
Look. You guys know that I'm a tactile politician, right? Okay? I'm a hugger, I'm a kisser, and I'm a little bit of a sniffer. Okay?
Let's break it down. David.
Let's break it down. I think once SNL goes after a Democrat, that's pretty much game over for them, isn't it, generally speaking?
Axelrod is back with me, the host of the X-Files. He has a conference coming up about campaign coverage. David, your view, your evaluation of how Biden's been covered in the past week.
Oh, look at that.
Well, I think it's,
look at that. Hold on.
What's that?
I realize that we're not talking about this, but I have to comment on the Chiron. Tricky Dick.
Oh, yeah.
CNN original series tonight at 9. Huh. I wonder why Texas Blue was in the chat talking about Nixon. I wonder why they want to break the law and start talking about taxes. Huh. Isn't that a coinky dink?
Big coinky dink. It's just a coincidence, James. Stop talking about it.
About the way we operate in today's media environment. You know, one thing that you learn when you're on the other side is that every day is treated by the media like election day, and every story is treated like the decisive story of the campaign, and very few turn out to be. I think this will be one of those.
Because you see, David Axelrod and the other people in the corporate press are now going to tell you why they are going to decide for you why this whole strange thing of literally going up to strange women, touching them when they don't know you're there, and sniffing their hair, and even to small children, James, caught on camera, caught on tape right there for the whole world to see. They are now going to tell you, the CNNs, that we don't think it's that big of a deal. It's not going to change anything.
But Biden compounded the problem by not disposing of this quickly. One of the basic premises of crisis communication is figure out where the story is going and get to where you need to go as quickly as possible. That's
something that we've talked about often on this show. He's 100% right there. It's called getting ahead of the curve. So you know what your opponents are going to use. You get in front of the story first so you can redirect the conversation in a way you want to redirect it. But it can't work for Joe, because coming out and saying, I'm just an affectionate person and, society is changing. I can't remember a time when in society it was okay to sniff the hair of small children and ask for personalized photos with them. I can't remember when that was okay.
And he had several days of responses before he...
Go ahead, James.
By the way, the only time getting ahead of the story works is when you're lying, because you're trying to shape it in a different direction. But when you're telling the truth, you don't give a fuck, because the truth will set you free.
Put out what I thought was a pretty effective video, honestly. And then the next day he compounded.
It was obviously effective, which is why we're still talking about it on CNN, because it was so darn effective.
The problem by not letting the video speak for himself, but making jokes at a conference. And so he brought the story back.
What you're about to see is one of the most amazing things that I've ever seen a cable news show ever do, James. Talking about how the video spoke for itself, how the video was effective. We've spoken about memes before. Wait until you see this.
For one more day.
If you don't watch CNN, you would have missed this.
So he could have done a better job and been more agile in dealing with this, and they're going to have to once he becomes an active candidate. But I don't think at the end of the day, when voters go to the polling places next year, that this is going to be foremost on their minds.
I beg to differ. You know why? You know why it's going to be foremost on their minds, James? You know why? Because there's going to be thousands and thousands and thousands of people making sure it's foremost on their minds. It's not up to CNN what's foremost on the people's minds. It's up to other people now. Sorry, CNN, you had your chance to run the shit. You can't run the shit. You're not effective enough to run the shit. And here's why. Here's why. They're actually going to show you why they're wrong.
Well, here's what Biden is up against. Here's how it may keep coming back and back and back. This is a meme that was created by a semi-anonymous man from Kansas. He posted it, and then Trump posted it, and then the president himself posted on Twitter. It's Biden fondling himself. Now,
it's Biden fondling himself.
Do you see that it's like the delicious layers of irony here, James? It's so amazing. They've just talked about getting ahead of the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now they're trying to get ahead of the meme.
Yeah.
But they don't understand fundamentally how memes work. Because now they have just shown the meme to a whole bunch of people who wouldn't have otherwise seen the meme, people who only watch CNN.
That's right.
Oh, dear. Oh, no. What have you done? You've now just accelerated it because now all the people who shared that meme originally by Carpe Donktum, and whether you like or dislike Carpe Donktum, that's not the issue here. The issue is he's got his meme on the cable news channel that he mocks. Like, do you see how incredible that is? That's like walking on the moon for somebody who makes memes.
On another level, this is how politics is waged this day. These are the meme wars in action.
The meme wars.
Democrats understand.
Again, sometimes you have to take a step back. Brian Stelter is literally talking about the meme wars on TV.
Hey, real quick, speaking about meme wars, hey, Philly, how'd that meme of Mueller time work out for you? That's why we win.
It's Mueller time, baby. We even named the show after it, didn't we?
We did. We named an entire episode.
Mueller time, baby.
Stand what they're up against, because there was a Mother Jones headline the other day saying the right-wing media machine is much more effective at this kind of visual communication, and the Democrats aren't even trying.
Oh, do you see what's happening here, ladies and gentlemen? Do you see? See, this is why Brian Stelter should never talk about memes. He's up there. He's putting up headlines from Mother Jones saying the left can't meme. I can't believe what I'm seeing here. This is a complete lack of any kind of forethought at all. This is incredible stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they are effective at digital communications, and they're effective at talking to their base. The question is how much it infects the rest of the coverage. But this—
Are you joking? Do you see? Look at this. Oh, they're very effective at talking to their base. But the question is, how much does it affect the rest of the coverage? You just played it on your fucking show. That's how much. That's how much it affects it. You are talking. You just played the clip on your show, and you've got the audacity to say, "Wow, it doesn't affect anybody else's coverage." What the hell is going on? David Axelrod. David, what? Like, would you go to? Who's watching David Axelrod's show now? He doesn't even have enough self-awareness to know what's being played on his own spot. He doesn't even know. Wow.
This is uncharted waters, as are many things with Trump. You have a president who's going to be, live tweeting the opposite party's primary, and you better believe that when anything happens in the Democratic race, he will have a comment, he will advance a meme like this, and Democrats are going to have to figure out how to deal with it. You know, Elizabeth Warren got into the back and forth on the Pocahontas thing, and what she learned, I think, is
he doesn't even realize bringing Elizabeth Warren up right now, talking about a meme, immediately worst response you could have. It immediately plugs into everybody's minds. Hey, honey, would you like a beer? Would you like a beer?
Exactly.
I'm going to have a beer. Let's have a beer. Can we have a beer? Hi, I'm going to open this beer now, and then I'm going to drink this beer. Would you like a beer? And then she offers a beer to the audience through a fucking camera. Oh, my God. This is the worst thing ever.
James, the other one, the more obvious one, he just referred to her as Pocahontas again.
I know.
He's now repeating Donald Trump's memes, and he doesn't even know it. Yep. He doesn't even know it.
This is how memes affect the zeitgeist. This is exactly right. He doesn't even realize that meme culture has impregnated itself in his brain, and he doesn't realize it.
Nope. He's perpetuating the memes that he is literally perpetuating the memes that he says aren't going to have any effect. I can't believe
love it. Great comment in the chat.
I've got no idea why nobody's watching CNN anymore. Do you?
Great comment in the chat. Great comment in the chat. It says, "Forget coding. The left needs to learn how to meme."
That engaging in a prolonged back and forth with him is exactly what he wants. So it's a tricky path to navigate.
Yeah. Engaging in a back and forth with him is exactly what he wants. And David Axelrod, you complete knuckle-dragging moron, repeating meme lines and showing internet memes on CNN is exactly what we want. You absolute moron. Thank you very much. Ball boys, umpires, game, set, match. It's over. Close the books. There's your hammering.
Stop the hammering.
That is all the time we have for you, folks. That was an amazing hammering, a great episode, as always, brought to you straight from the Trust and Verify crew of Boogie Bumper. You can follow him at Boogie Bumper. You can follow me at Real Person, PLTCS. You can follow us at TAV Show, and you can always find all of our episodes on TAVshow.com. Aloha, everyone. Have a great night.
Victory is not winning for our party. Victory is winning for our country. This year, America will recognize two important anniversaries that show us the majesty of America's mission and the power of American pride. In June, we mark 75 years since the start of what General Dwight D. Eisenhower called the Great Crusade, the Allied liberation of Europe in World War II. On D-Day, June 6, 1944, 15,000 young American men jumped from the sky and 60,000 more stormed in from the sea to save our civilization from tyranny. Here with us tonight are three of those incredible heroes. Private First Class Joseph Riley, Staff Sergeant Irving Locker, and Sergeant Herman Zaitchik.